Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, I thought to speak about my long relationship with the Bhagavad Gita by reading first from Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, which I got up here on my little trusty machine here. Of course, the first verse, many of you know, Dharma Kshetre. Okay, lecture's over. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Bhagavad Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna. He heard the Bhagavad Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession, without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things that are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Bhagavad Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Now, this purport goes on, several more paragraphs, but just this one paragraph, I could speak for 2 days. Do you have the time?
Yes.
No, you don't. And I have to catch a flight. But I would like to speak to you about how the Bhagavad Gita really is just an utterly extraordinary text. So much so that thousands of English translations have been translated since 1785, when Charles Wilkins in England first translated the Gita in English. And the Bhagavad Gita has held such fascination even in the West for these couple of centuries, so much so that it keeps giving. It keeps on, holding the gripping the intellectual fascination and spiritual fascination of Westerners. So it's a great gift to the world. But many Westerners, upon first encountering the Bhagavad Gita, don't understand how this is a scripture. I mean, listen to how most scriptures sound in the West. The Bible, the Hebrew Bible, starts with this. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Sounds like a scripture, doesn't it? The Gospel of Mark, the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. As it is written in the prophet Isaiah, "See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you who will prepare the way." the voice of one crying out in the wilderness. Prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight. Sounds like a scripture. And then, what about the Quran? Glory to Allah, Most High, full of grace and mercy. He created all, including man. To man he gave a special place in his creation. He honored man to be his agent, and so on and so forth. Sounds like a scripture. Bhagavad Gita. On the field of Dharma, on the field of Kuru, assembled together desiring to fight, were my sons and the sons of Pandu. How did they act? O Sanjaya. What? You see, the difference is that the other Western scriptures front load divinity. God's names, who God is, God's nature, God's activities, God's divine acts, and so on. Bhagavad Gita is asking about what is going on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. This baffles the Western mind. Now, many of you already know the background, the backstory of the Mahabharata. But Westerners are disadvantaged because they don't know the backstory. So obviously an introduction needs to bring that backstory in. But then again, why shouldn't a scripture mimic the human situation? All of us were born into a story that has already begun. Have you noticed? When you were born, you don't remember, but when you were born, it was weird. Yes, exactly. It was timed perfectly, thank you. Yeah. We are all born into a story that's already begun. We didn't know who our parents were. We found out who our parents were. We got to know who our parents were, our siblings, our relatives, our culture. We were all born into a story that had already begun. So in encountering the Bhagavad Gita for a Westerner, or even for many Indians, it's something that's foreign, something that we have to get to know. So my journey with the Bhagavad Gita began way back before most of you were born, okay? So I'm a very, very old man. I'm pushing around 98 now. No, I'm well preserved. It's the yoga and the chanting and the spoonful of formaldehyde I take every day. But it happened way back in America in the 1960s, which was a very messy time in American culture. Well, when was it not messy in America? I mean, it's still messy. You know, Kurukshetra is being repeated over and over and over, just different characters, different actors. But back then, there was the Vietnam War. And that war was a war for which America never declared it as a war. And yet they were sending young men off to fight in a war that was not a declared war. We were raised knowing that we would be drafted at age 18. So this was a dreadful situation. Half the men that went over there came back in pine boxes. So we all grew up knowing we were headed for the draft. So many of my generation, many of my peers escaped. They would go to Mexico, they would go to Canada, they would disappear. Or if they stayed in America, they would take drugs. They would escape through, hallucinogenics and so on. I escaped through yoga. I went the way of yoga. And when I was practicing yoga seriously, beginning at age 13, I encountered the Bhagavad Gita at age 14, and it completely held my fascination. And as I was beginning to read the Bhagavad Gita, I realized that I was entering into another war, the war of Kurukshetra. So there was Vietnam, war on the outside and Kurukshetra war on the inside. I just couldn't get away from it. Why does the Bhagavad Gita begin with a war? What makes the Bhagavad Gita so powerful is it begins not with the divinity, but with the human condition. We all have our battlefields, and that's what the Gita wants to show us. What is our battlefield? What is the nature of our battlefield? So at that time, it was either Vietnam or Krishna Nam. And I chose Krishna Nam. And so I entered into the Bhagavad Gita back at the age of 14. And at age 15, I was so absorbed in the Bhagavad Gita, and I got many translations, wondering how it could be that there are so many translations, because I didn't know Sanskrit at the time. Then I went to my parents, who were very educated people, and I said, Mom, Dad, I would like to drop out of high school. This is every parent's nightmare. But it got worse. Why do you want to drop out? And what will you do all day? Well, I will read Bhagavad Gita, I will go into meditation, and I'll read sacred texts of yoga. This is something no parent wants to hear. I mean, in one sense, it's really good, but in another sense, it's like what's going to happen with the rest of your life. So they said, well, what about college? I said, if it's supposed to happen, then it will happen. So they let me drop out. I dropped out. I'm ashamed to tell all of you, but you're all my friends, and it doesn't have to leave this room. But I don't have a high school diploma. However, a year later, I chose to go into college, 1 year earlier than my peers. And the reason for that is I wanted to get more education to be able to appreciate the Bhagavad Gita, to appreciate what it was saying in the Sanskrit language and so on. So I then began to, I entered college at Johns Hopkins University, and then I went into college for 3 years and realized that scholars knew a lot about the tradition but didn't practice. But then many practitioners were very serious and deeply dedicated, but didn't know much about the tradition. So I wanted to put these two together. So I dropped out of Johns Hopkins. I did a lot of dropping out, but I also did a lot of dropping in. So I dropped out of Johns Hopkins after 3 years. And I went to India for the first time when I was 18 years old. And I went with 5 other friends, which made me feel a little secure, because back then, you may not know, once you go to India, there's no contact anymore with the West. I mean, to make a phone call to the West takes about 12 hours to just get a line, and it cost $12 back then for just the first minute. That's something like, $80 now, or rupees, 8,000 rupees, something like that. 8,000 rupees for 1 minute. What can you say to your parents in 1 minute? I'm alive, I'm here, I'm happy, I'm safe, no problem, goodbye. And that's pretty much what I did, only once. So I went to India with these 5 friends, and they were involved in some other traditions that just didn't sit right with me. And I wanted to go to the land of Krishna. And I knew that was Vrindavan. So I told my friends, I'm going to leave you all, and I'm going to Vrindavan. So I did. I went to Vrindavan. But little did I know what day it was, because when I got on the train from Delhi, I flew up to Delhi from somewhere, I think it was Mumbai, and I flew up to Delhi, and then I got on a train to Mathura, which is what you have to do to get to Vrindavan. Well, back then, I was extremely thin. I'm in my fat stage right now. But I was very thin. I only weighed 108 pounds. My father used to say, when I drank tomato juice, I looked like a thermometer. I was very thin. My parents were concerned about how thin, and they were concerned I went off to India that thin I had no reserves, right? Anyway, on this train, it was so crowded, I didn't have to hold on to anything. I took up the space between two persons that supported me from side to side and two persons from back to back. It was very secure. The train was slowing down, train was speeding up, no problem. I was held up. I'm convinced it was a structural engineering feat. But I decided to ask a gentleman that seemed like he knew English, because almost no one knew English back then. I said, "Is the train always this crowded?" He said, no, this is a special day. I said, "Special day? How is it a special day?" "This is Sri Krishna Janmashtami." I said, "What is Sri Krishna? What was that?" "Janmashtami." He said, "This is the holiest day of the year. This is the day in which we celebrate the appearance of Krishna." I said, "Wow, this is good. I like what's happening here." So I ended up in Vrindavan. But I spent several months in India. My parents thought I was dead. They hadn't heard from me. I was caught up with a very powerful yogi who took me everywhere, made me do crazy things that I never knew could happen, but realized I needed more Krishna bhakti. I came back to the States and realized that there was 3 blocks from where I was living at Johns Hopkins University, 3 blocks away, there was a little tiny Krishna temple. So I went there. And at this point, I went to India with long hair and a beard, and I came back with shaven and shika. So I came to the front door and knocked, and a young lady answered, and she said, "Hari Bol, Prabhu." I said, "Hi." I didn't understand Hari Bol, Prabhu at that point. So she said, "So what temple are you from?" She thought I came from a temple. I said, "Well, I just came back from India." I said I came back from Vrindavan. She said, "Oh," she said, "New Vrindavan?" I said, "I know of a New Delhi. I don't know of a new Vrindavan. I only know of an old Vrindavan." She said, "Vrindavan, India?" I said, "Yes." And she shut the door. I said, "Maybe I'm not supposed to say that or something." Anyway, she ran and got the temple president. And the rest, of course, is history. This was 1972. And at this time, I realized I needed to drop out of college. Okay, so it was another dropout. Okay, and I needed to join the ashram and be really become a serious sadhaka. And it was at that time that I did, and I joined the ashram, and I was initiated by Srila Prabhupada. And it turned out I was initiated by Prabhupada at New Vrindavan. So I found the New Vrindavan. I was at the old Vrindavan, and eventually I went to the New Vrindavan. And Prabhupada initiated me, and he was initiating several other people at the time. And Prabhupada said to me, when it was my turn, said, "Your name is Garuda Das." Something like that. Prabhupada had a very grave, deep voice. "Your name is Garuda Das." And everyone went, "Yay, Jai, Haribol," right? So it sounded like Prabhupada gave me the name of Guru Das Das. There's already a Guru Das, one of Prabhupada's original disciples. So I came along and I became, Guru Das Das. Didn't seem right to me, but I accepted it. In fact, being Das itself was hard enough. To be a Das Das is even more difficult. Even though, despite the expression Gopi Partur Padakamalayur Dasa Dasa Anudasa, I just wanted to start with Das and maybe we'll progress to another Das later. But Suddenly I'm hurled into Das. So for an hour, everyone called me Guru Das. And this is terribly distressing because it didn't, somehow, I don't know. And then Pradyumna heard, who was Prabhupada's secretary at the time, he said, "What did he just call you?" I said, "Guru Das." He said, "That is not your name." He said, "Let me make sure. Let me look," because we were looking on the list. He said, and he said, "Oh, no, not Guru Das. Garuda Das, like the big bird." I said, "I know who Garuda is, thank you." So therefore, I then became Garuda Das after an hour. So, and ever since, people have called me Garuda Das, not Guru Das. So please do not call me Guru Das. I told Guru Das this story about this. He thought it was very funny. He thought I should return to the name Guru Das, since he was Guru Das. In any case, I went to the big first festival, the first Mayapur festival. As probably most of you know, Prabhupada wanted his disciples to come to India once a year to gather together, both in Mayapur for 2 weeks and in Vrindavan for 2 weeks. And this is where I had the great privilege of being with Prabhupada for a whole month, morning and night. And it was really just amazing. And it was during this trip that I realized that I had a lifelong relationship with the Bhagavad Gita and some special service, but I didn't know what it was. In fact, I had the strangest and sort of unexpected desire to actually leave the festival early so I could go back and dive into Prabhupada's books, because it was through his books that I felt I could be so close to him. So, but I stayed, of course. And of course, the festival had about 150, 200 devotees from around the world. And it was funny, I heard devotees chanting the Maha Mantra for the first time with different accents. It was really amusing to me. The French, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Anyway, but there was the Maha Mantra, but with the French accent, and then with other accents. It was amazing. All over the world, different accents with the Maha Mantra, but it was the Maha Mantra. And we all came together. But the first day I arrived, they asked, who would like to do some seva? Now the building was half built. I mean, the whole structure was there, but it was half finished. Prabhupada lived on the second floor. I was staying on the fourth floor that had basically piles of cement dust. If you can imagine this, piles of, oh yes, please move up if you can to make more room. Yeah. Yeah, can you move up closer here? That's fine. Yeah, I promise I won't bite. I'm not a nasty person. Okay, that's not, okay, not too close. Okay. So they asked, who would like to do some seva? So I raised my hand, along with many others, and someone came along and gave me a broom. Sweep the steps from the fourth floor to the first floor to the fourth floor. And I said I'd be happy to do that. So I started sweeping the first step, and then the dust went down. And then I started sweeping the second step, and I realized the dust went down to the first step. So it took me a few minutes to realize that I should actually start at the top, not start at the bottom. I wasn't used to sweeping steps. So I started at the top, and I started sweeping all the way down, and the steps were in a kind of, an arrangement where, there's the landing, the floor, and then it goes halfway down, there's a landing, and then halfway down to the next floor down, right? So I've gotten from the fourth floor to the third floor, and I'm now between the second floor and the first floor on a landing that accumulated a huge amount of cement dust and particles from building and so on and so forth. And I had this, it covered pretty much the whole landing. Someone from the second floor quickly came around and said, Prabhupada is coming. Prabhupada is coming. And I'm looking at him like, what? He can't be coming. I'm in the middle of this, But sure enough, Prabhupada came with a few sannyasis around the corner, coming down the step, from the second floor, beginning to, march down the steps. And I'm absolutely terrified because there's nowhere to step. There's just piles of dust and debris. And this is what Prabhupada's going to walk in. And I'm responsible. So I'm there couched in the corner, holding the broom like a sannyas danda. That may be the closest I ever get to sannyas. I'm holding the broom and folding my hands with the broom like this, just terrified. And I keep looking at the dust and Prabhupada coming down. Prabhupada's giving me a big smile. I think he was humored by how terrified I looked. I don't know how I looked because I'm me. But I think I must have looked very terrified. And there is Prabhupada coming down and he's stepping right into the pile of debris and giving me a big smile, and I'm just frozen. I'm just frozen. And I noticed, I was watching his footsteps and the footsteps of some of the devotees following him, and there was one imprint of Prabhupada's step in the dust that was untouched by the other footprints. And after Prabhupada went down the rest of the steps, I got down and I put my head in there, just like that. And I think if I've made any advancement, I think it was because of that. I literally got the dust of the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. And I mean dust, lots of dust, okay? So, it was quite a festival. Unfortunately, most of the devotees got sick. I did not, because I fasted on banana and dab juice. That's all I ate. And everyone else had questionable stuff that was prepared, not really by devotees, but it was prepared on the outside, and it was not done in a clean way. They got sick, but I did not. So only about 12 or 14 devotees would attend Bhagavatam class, an evening class every day. So I was just sitting there, the 12 of us, with Prabhupada every day, every morning, every night. It was wonderful. I mean, I felt badly that I was glad that they were sick so I wouldn't be crowded out, but that's a terrible thing to think. I don't want my God brothers and God sisters to be sick. Anyway, but it gave me a chance to be just very, intimately connected with Prabhupada, morning and evening. And the other frightening time that I had during that visit was early one morning. The Krishna Balaram temple was only a building site, and the columns were just brick columns going up into the sky. That's it. Prabhupada's quarters were finished, and he came from there and would walk down to Fogal Ashram, which is where we stayed. Fogal Ashram is an ashram that has an atrium that opens up to the sky, and it was very dark out when he would come, and he came and he sat on his vyasasana, and he gave class. And of course, again, there were only 12 or 15 of us there in the morning. So Prabhupada is giving class, and he's looking out, and suddenly he's looking at me, and he turns to Brahmananda and says, "What is he doing?" And Brahmananda looks over. "Oh, Prabhupada, he is sleeping." I'm sleeping? I mean, I'm watching this and I'm sleeping. And Prabhupada said, "Go over and tell him to leave." I can't quite believe my senses. I'm sleeping. Brahmananda is coming over to tell me to leave. So he's walking over. This is a terrifying moment. He's walking over, and suddenly it's the person next to me. He was sleeping, not I. he was sleeping, and he was asked to leave. But until that happened, I thought I was losing my mind. I was fully awake, but I was told I was sleeping. Try that sometime. That is a weird thing to experience. Bless you, Govinda. Anyway, marvelous experiences with Prabhupada. Now in the States, I got to be in Prabhupada's room, sitting at the side of his desk, just a few feet away from him, just this far. And I would be with him for hours. Went to Rath Yatra with Prabhupada, several Rath Yatras, and Govinda. And so, but I never asked Prabhupada one thing. I simply felt my duty was to be quiet and listen, and be there and take in Prabhupada's amazing presence. In fact, my legal name, Schweig, is German, and Schweig means silence. So I was living up to my namesake when I was with Prabhupada. But I can't live up to it as a professor, otherwise I would lose my job. I cannot, I have to be rather loquacious when I'm teaching, but when around Prabhupada, I am the student and I'm taking everything in. So many wonderful moments with Prabhupada, but it was by Prabhupada's amazing grace that I have been able to take up the life of a scholar. And I was the first devotee to enter into the academic arena, to be, to speak on behalf of the Vaishnava tradition. And many miracles happened along the way. What happened was that Ravindra Swarup, my dear godbrother, was called upon to start a Bhagavata college in Mayapur. Prabhupada had wanted a Bhagavata college in Mayapur that was connected with the University of Calcutta that would give higher degrees. And Ravindra said, look, you finished 3 years of college, you dropped out, why don't you drop back in and finish, and then you can be my first student. I said, that sounds great. Wonderful. Live in Mayapur, study in Mayapur, attain perfection in Mayapur, whatever. It sounds great. So I entered back into school, and then I didn't go back to Johns Hopkins. I went to American University in Washington, D.C. And halfway through the semester, Prabhupada canceled it, or something happened that it didn't work out. And so I'm thinking to myself, why am I doing this then? Why did Krishna arrange for me, and all the trouble it took for me to get back into college? Why am I doing this? Well, at the time, this was 1975. This is when Prabhupada was producing a volume of the Chaitanya Charitamrita once every 2 weeks. 17 volumes, once every 2 weeks. And the BPT in LA was, in Los Angeles, was working around the clock. They were not sleeping. They would take over each other's duties when they just got too exhausted, and they worked around the clock. And for 17, 2 times 17 is what, 34? Yeah, 34, okay. For 34 weeks, this was going on. 1 volume every 2 weeks. It was just miraculous. Well, there was someone in the ashram who was so thirsty for the Chaitanya Charitamrita as I was, that we would sneak out at night in the hallway with our flashlights and read late into the night each volume that would come out. We were so eager. And of course, by the time we went to Mangal Arati, we were exhausted. We only got 3 or 4 hours of sleep, but it was worth it. We loved it. Those were memorable days, reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita fresh out of the BBT from Prabhupada. And we read these volumes one by one at night in the hallway with flashlights. That was my first reading of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And in it, it was clear that Mahaprabhu Gauranga took up the danda to convince the intellectual classes of persons of Krishna Bhakti, the profound teachings of Krishna Bhakti. And I was thinking, Prabhupada wanted some PhDs. Mahaprabhu himself demonstrated that we take up different positions in society to serve Krishna Bhakti and people's understanding of the profound teachings of Krishna Bhakti. So it became obvious to me that the PhD was the danda of the age. And you have to remember that the Bhaktivedanta Institute had already been begun by Prabhupada, which basically engaged devotees who already had science degrees or were just finishing them. So I decided to apply to the two best South Asian programs in the United States, University of Chicago, where Edward Dimmock taught, and his foreword appears in the original Bhagavad Gita printed by Macmillan. Prabhupada so much appreciated his foreword. And the University of Pennsylvania. Well, little did I realize it was quite a privilege to have been granted entrance into the PhD program in both. And I was really amazed because, for application to a doctoral program, you have to write a statement of purpose, who you are, what you want to do, and so on. So I was so nervous about it, I wrote something so bold, right in the first sentence. I am a disciple of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, a member of the Hare Krishna movement, and I intend to pursue studies pursuant with that lifestyle. That's really not the way you apply for a doctoral program. It's not a good idea, But I presented that very boldly, and I figured if they didn't like that, then I didn't like them. So I was a little fanatical, but I needed to know that they respected my life, my life commitment. So and they accepted it. The two best programs. So I consulted my GBC man, Rupanuga Prabhu, and he thought it was a great idea. And so I attended the University of Chicago and became a student of Edward Dimmock. Halfway through the first semester, Rupanuga calls me up and says, Garuda, I don't think anyone is ever going to do this, so you need to go to Harvard. I said, Rupanuga, I just got here, so, I dropped out again. I'm telling you, my life is full of dropouts and drop-ins. So I applied to Harvard, blindly just going along with what Prabhupada and what ISKCON needed, and I got into Harvard. So I went to Harvard. Anyway, what happened after my first year at the University of Chicago, I wrote a master's thesis on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This was finished in the spring of '77, which would be the last spring that Prabhupada would be here with us on this planet. And so Satsarup Maharaj and I were close friends at the time. And he read the thesis. He said, this is a wonderful thesis. You must send to Prabhupada. He wrote me in a letter. And I wrote a letter back saying, I refuse to send it to Prabhupada because he is busy trying to finish the Bhagavatam and he's not well. So I'm not going to. He wrote back saying, you must send it to him because it will give him great pleasure to see this. And I said, I refuse to do this. And anyway, we went back and forth. We had a little friendship fight. And then he said, if you don't send it to Prabhupada, I'll never write to you again. Which I was very attached to our correspondence. So that's the only reason I sent it to Prabhupada. And I sent it to Prabhupada with a 2-page letter talking about how I'm on my way to Harvard, my plans, how to establish what he had desired. And he was reading through the whole master's thesis, hearing my letter, albeit from Satsarup, who happened just at that time, at the end of the summer, to be Prabhupada's secretary. So it was very funny. He happened. They rotate, and Satsarup happened to be there. And Satsarup wrote back saying, Prabhupada wanted you to know, and he was quoting, I am pleased he is preaching on such a high level, end quote. So that was my license to keep going. So I took it as not that I was, teaching on such a high level, but that I would eventually try to do that. to please him. So this then, became my life's goal. So when I got to Harvard, I entered a degree program called Comparative Religion, which is what Prabhupada wanted to do. As you heard in this purport, Prabhupada is comparing Bhagavad Gita to other sacred texts of the world. So I began comparing Bhagavad Gita to the Bible. And I saw that the Bible had numerous reference works, word references, exhaustive indexes of words and ways of entering into the text in critical ways and so on. And I figured, okay, now I will go to the ones for the Bhagavad Gita. There were none. No true word indexes to the Bhagavad Gita, the third most read sacred text in the world. I said, how could this be? So I started compiling the words of the Bhagavad Gita using mainframe computers. Now, most of you don't know what a mainframe computer is or would have no idea what it looks like, but it takes up the size of 4 times this room. What is less powerful than this? 4 times the space of this room with punch cards. Do you have any idea what a punch card is? Horrible little things that have series of A's, series of B's, series of 1s and 2s, and you punch out each card for each letter. And you have to go through this process. So I had trays of punch cards. In a hand truck, I would take out to the car. And the third time I did this, the punch cards fell over into the parking lot. I said, I am not going to go through this. That was my first attempt to create this taller book. Then I got a Smithsonian Institution research grant to come to India in 1982, when I lived in Vrindavan for 6 months, and then I lived in Bangalore for 6 months. I came back from India, and everyone had one of these on their desks. Going back to the West after a year in India is always a little bit of an adjustment, right? But everyone's using computers suddenly. What is this? So anyway, I learned how to use the computer, and gradually over the years, it became a great tool for assembling this exhaustive word reference, the concordance, what is known as a concordance. And it becomes now, it just got published finally after 44 years of starting it at my first year at Harvard. 44 years later, finally, I finished it. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. This Garuda's a little slow. He's a little slow. Perhaps he does good work, but he's slow. So that's the book that finally got published this year with Columbia University Press. And it will go into every major reference collection, every major library's reference collection in the world, because there's never been one like it. So the Bhagavad Gita has deserved for years a word reference that can give access to deeper levels of the text's meanings and senses. So my relationship with the Bhagavad Gita really has been a long one, and in 2007, I did my own translation of the Bhagavad Gita for HarperCollins. I guess that's up here too?
Yes.
Yeah, there it is. And that was done because I found people in the academic setting criticizing Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, because it did sound like a motivated interpretation, as Prabhupada is saying in his own Bhagavad Gita, that it should be unmotivated. So I wanted to show that a strict academic but sensitively worded Bhagavad Gita translation would show that what Prabhupada does is completely valid, and I wanted to verify it as an academic. And that was what motivated me to come out with the Bhagavad Gita translation that I did. So these are the things, this is the academic journey that I've been on. And with the Bhagavad Gita, it's been a long one. Now, the other book you see here, Dance of Divine Love, is a treatment, an academic treatment, scholarly treatment of the Rasa Lila Panchadhyayi. Are all of you familiar with what that is? Maybe not. So in the Bhagavata Purana, which is 335 chapters long, Prabhupada translated most of the Bhagavatam, or Bhagavata Purana. And the Bhagavata Purana is the ultimate, sacred text for Krishna bhaktas. And it gives the lives of great saintly persons. It talks much philosophy and Sankhya philosophy and yoga philosophy and so on throughout. And then finally, the 10th book, the Dashamaskanda, the longest chapter of 90, longest book of 90 chapters, has at the very heart of it the Braja Leelas, Krishna's early childhood Leelas, and then the Rasa Leela, his great circle dance with the Vraja Gopikas. And it's in those 5 chapters, chapters 29 through 33, that I examine in this book called Dance of Divine Love. And it's printed by Princeton University Press. And it's the first time a bhakta has printed with a very prestigious publisher anything in the academic world. So again, another, wonderful miracle of, Krishna's kripa. And then I'll just end by telling you that the other projects that I've been working on, the many books that are going to be coming out, are streaming along. But one other miracle I should tell you about is, again, making history, is that once I started entering this academic realm, other devotees began to do this selectively. So there were certain devotees who went to Oxford University, and I was called upon by Oxford University's Department of Theology to fly over the big puddle, the Atlantic, to examine their doctoral dissertation. So here is one bhakta examining the doctoral dissertation of another bhakta. I don't think that's ever happened, ever. So, these miracles, one after another, it's been exhilarating, really. It's been exhilarating. But lots of funny things along the way, lots of amazing discoveries, and my god brothers and god sisters have been very appreciative. So let me just open up for any comments or questions about along the way. Oh, you have to use the microphone?
Hare Krishna. Okay. It's on?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Okay.
Oh, I have to tell you one thing. In our trip to Vrindavan, we have had a wonderful trip to Vrindavan, Govardhan. And so, now, my wife has been to other parts of India. She's been to Mayapur many times, to Jagannath Puri, but never to Vrindavan, so I was enjoying introducing her to Vrindavan, finally. And so we went around together to all these wonderful, temples and so on. So we went to Radha Damodar, and we, had the blessing of Rupa Goswami's samadhi. And the pujari there who happened to see us and opened up the samadhi doors and took Rupa Goswami's padakas and tapped us on the head and his big beads. And then I went up, and then Radha Damodar, pujari, recognized me from when I lived at Radha Damodar for 3 days 4 or 5 years ago. He recognized me and gave me a wonderful garland right from the deities. So this is wonderful. I feel like I'm being rewarded for all my big seva, right? Well, listen to how Krishna took care of that. So we're walking out. Krishna Kant is ahead of me, I walk out after I put my shoes on, I walk out, and a monkey comes right up to me, this close. This is not a comfortable event. Have you ever stared a monkey in the eyes? This close. And he plucks a flower out of my garland and starts eating it right now. I'm going, okay. And so I decided to give him the garland. Otherwise, he could eat me. So then we go to lunch with Srivatsa Goswami of the Radharaman Mandir, who's my old friend from I met at Harvard. He was a visiting scholar at Harvard. So we told him about that event. And so he said, oh yes, Garuda Das. He said, this is Krishna. Krishna trying to humble you after all your great accomplishments. So that is his interpretation, which obviously I don't agree with. Anyway, just bless you. Govinda, Govinda. Anyway, any questions any of this or about anything, about Prabhupada?
It's okay, I can go there.
Huh?
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
I don't think you're on. Oh, there
Hare
you
Krishna,
are.
Prabhu. Thank you so much. This has been a very enlightening class to get a sense of your journey and so many miracles in particular, and the seva bhav that you have along the way. You know, while reading these books, and I've been reading these since 2019 now, and
So you're a slow reader?
very, very slow.
No, I don't. That's fine. You keep,
Yeah,
you go
and
at
so-
your own
and so-
pace. Yeah. Others will be faster.
Yes, the Divine Dance of Love in particular, it's my Kartik favorite, so I just go over,
nice. Right.
go over the 5 chapters
Yes.
of the Bhagavad Gita and the Venu Gita. The one thing that I was just contemplating this morning was that all of us are in a path of bhakti, and very often, clarity in which we understand yoga as a concept is
Yes.
often confusing when we have to do regulative principles, and we also have to do seva at the temple, and we have to do so and so, but where's the time for really that connection?
Yeah.
So if you would like to comment more on the actual take Krishna had on yoga, that would be really nice.
Yes. In the Bhagavad Gita, every chapter is named as a yoga. It's either a yoga for humans or a yoga of the divine. And the first chapter is beautifully titled Arjuna Vashada Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's despair, hopelessness. Wouldn't this be wonderful to open up studios of yoga? The yoga of hopelessness. If you're feeling hopeless, come in. We will practice the yoga of hopelessness. This is the first chapter, and this is to give us, as readers of the Bhagavad Gita, a sense that we all have our Kurukshetras, and we can all feel kind of hopeless at times. But this is a good thing if it precipitates a connection with the divine, as it did with Arjuna. So, now, Krishna sort of spoiled me, because when I go to work, what do? I teach Bhagavad Gita. I mean, how bad is that? When I go to work, I teach yoga philosophy. So I'm very spoiled, and that's because Krishna knew I wouldn't be capable of a regular job and still think of him. But all of you who don't have this kind of job, Krishna is present everywhere. He's present in the hearts of others. And it's about practicing the ability to see Krishna in the hearts of others. And no matter what our work is, Krishna is there in the hearts of others. Even if they don't realize it, it behooves us to go to the altars of other people's hearts and worship Krishna there. And that is yoga. That is the yoga of a bhakta. This takes practice. It takes practice. I'm still practicing it. I went to the worst colleague in my university, and I decided to just hang out with him. I wanted to see if I could see Krishna in his heart. Well, I haven't yet, but I'm practicing, okay? It's much easier to see Krishna in the heart of others that you really like and love, but someone you don't like at all. So I like to go to people I don't like at all and see if I can see Krishna in their hearts. So, but the idea is Krishna resides there, and it's about really interacting with them proper, but interacting through them to Krishna. So it's an interesting. They don't know you're doing that, okay? Don't tell them. I'm working with Krishna in your heart right now.
By the way.
Yeah, don't do that. You actually could be fired from your job if you do something like that. So do not do this. And I don't want to get any emails from any of you. Garuda, I tried doing what you do, and thanks. I got fired. So I don't want that, okay? It's about really going deeper into the possibilities of relating to others. We take for granted what it means to interact with other humans. As Arjuna couldn't see Krishna at first, when Arjuna was agonizing about what he was about to have to do on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he was dumping the contents of his broken heart to Krishna and didn't realize who Krishna was. He forgot. That's our position. So we need to, see better, hear better, and understand that every person we encounter, there's some message from Krishna therein. There's some purpose there, something we're supposed to learn. This is the yoga of a bhakta. To see how in everything, ultimately, this is the perfection, kaivalya, to see how in everything divinity is embracing us and has been embracing us for an eternity, from without and from within. And a bhakta's yoga is the return embrace. Plain and simple is the return embrace. Haven't you ever hugged a kid and the kid just stands there? That's what we're like. We're like that kid. Krishna's been hugging us, embracing us, and we just kind of stand there limp, right? But he doesn't hug us too heavily, too tightly, because he knows you have to have your freedom to receive the hug or not receive the hug. But in fact, Krishna says in the Gita, I love no one, I hate no one. I'm neutral to everyone. But one who loves me, I love them like anything. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tams tataiva bhajamyaham. As they submit themselves to me, I love them reciprocally. He doesn't stalk us. He doesn't follow us around. On campus sidewalks during class periods, campus sidewalks, they get crowded, right? They get crowded. So there were two young ladies, students, in front of me as we're walking, and I heard one of them ask the other, does Mike still love you? And the other one answered, if he doesn't, I'll kill him. I was startled. Where's Mike? If Mike says he loves her, he's doing so under duress, and that's not love at all. And if he's honest and says, I don't love you, he's dead. This is a serious situation. I put signs all over campus for Mike. Well, false Mike's, answer to it. I never found Mike. I think he's dead. Krishna is not a divinity who forces love, manipulates love, threatens love, not a judgmental love. He waits an eternity for us to turn. just that simple. Sarvaguyatamam bhuya shrinu me paramang vachaha. Ishtosi me dhritam iti tato vachami te yatam. My greatest secret of all, please hear once again, my supreme message, you are so much loved by me. I mean, really, there's nothing more to say after that. So I won't say anything more after that. But anyway, but any other comments? Oh,
Yeah, you can ask. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I don't need the mic really.
It would be good
Yeah,
for everyone else. Yeah.
So,
It's up. It's up. Yeah.
so I've often wondered when we read some of the saints who talk about God as me and God, whereas our Vedas, not that I've read the Vedas, but some understanding that I am pure consciousness, pure consciousness just manifesting as Neha, as Arjun, as you. So why would our scriptures or our saints not talk like that? That it's really, if it's pure consciousness, that's everything. This pulpit, this laptop, everything. It is just pure consciousness that's manifesting. So why wouldn't we not talk about it like that rather than saying it's, Krishna's waiting? Because I am Krishna, you are Krishna, we're all Krishna. So I've just wondered, why is it that we've not talked on those lines rather than and position God as outside of us, whereas we're all with God. So that's my question.
Yeah, back in the old days when temples were being erected in America and around the globe, back in those early days, it was so interesting. A variety of people would show up at Sunday feasts. It was amazing. And I used to enjoy, sitting down with people, with the guests, find out who they were, why they came to the temple, what they thought about it, and so on. So I sat down once with one gentleman, and I introduced myself. I said, "Hi, my name is Garuda. Who are you?" And he said, "I'm God." I said, "You're God?" He said, "Yes, I'm God." I said, "Do you know how long I've been waiting to meet you?" This is the best moment of my life. I have finally met you. Thank you for coming to the temple. You belong in the temple. After all, if you're God, you belong here. The Advaitin philosophy of Shankaracharya, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mitya, basically espouses that way, that we're all consciousness. However, it's counterintuitive to say that we all are the same being, because you're sitting over there, and I'm sitting over here, and you have a unique center of consciousness. It's unique, and you have and around that center of consciousness, you have a whole history and a whole life, even previous lives. I mean, it was very clear that you were a human in your last life. I was an animal. Yeah, I was a rooster. But I've come a long way. Jumping from rooster to human is quite an achievement, okay? So give me a little credit here, okay? You may laugh, but it's an achievement. But, once a colleague of mine went to an Advaitin ashram with his wife, and his wife asked the head Swami, "So what is it like when you've reached perfection? What is it like?" And he said, "It's like going into a deep sleep for eternity." She gasped and said, and turned to her husband, "I don't want to be in a coma forever." Actually, everything that we enjoy here, everything that really is beautiful here, everything that is so playful, sweetly playful here, is there in the divine. And it's not that we merge with it, it's that we become united with it. So we as bhaktas, we worship Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Govinda, and Radha Gopinathji. These are the three principal deities of Vrindavan, the supremely beautiful, the supremely playful, and the supremely joyful deities. And that's Krishna. And we become one with his world, but we retain unique and discrete individuality as well. And as I give the example of, in fact, Krishna Kanta and I were watching the parrots in Vrindavan, these beautiful green parrots. And when they would fly, you could see them. But when they went into the tree, they disappeared because the green bird went into the green tree. So the green bird became one with the tree, but yet it was still a bird, and the tree was still a tree. So on one level, it was one. On another level, there was a relationship between the bird and the tree. But if we say everything can be reduced to consciousness and that there's no individuality, then, I could wear a cotton ball instead of a shirt, as Prabhupada said. Or if I invite you over to our house, I could say, come to my house, you'll see the trees flying over my roof and the birds planted in the backyard. This is crazy. So yes, consciousness is there, but there's affective consciousness. Consciousness that rises above the level of being into a level of feeling, deepest feeling. And this is bhava turning into bhava. We say in Sanskrit. So it's the heart, it's a matter of the heart. And Krishna is calling for our hearts. Do you know how many times Krishna speaks about souls coming to him in the Bhagavad Gita in that 2-hour conversation? Over 22 times. Can you imagine if someone texted you, please come over to the house tonight? Okay, that's a nice invitation. I'm hoping you're coming to the house tonight. Okay, we're getting a little insistent here. Please come to the house tonight. I really want to see you. Wow, 3 times. Krishna texts 22 times. He wants us. He's already embracing all of us, but he wants more of us, and that's the nature of love. And the nature of love is, on the one hand, a total acceptance and embracing of someone, but wanting more of them, to enter more into the mystery of the other. And that's Krishna with us. That's Krishna with Radha. And that's why in Vrindavan, all you hear is Radhe, Radhe. Right? Everyone say Radhe, Radhe.
Radhe, Radhe.
Sounds pretty good to me. What do you think? Are you convinced, or do I need to say more? No, I'm not threatening you. I'm just, I mean, I have a plane to catch, so I am limited in what I can say here. But if Krishna has in his world at least what we have in this world that is so beautiful and so playful and so joyful. But there's so much more of it there. And yet, he blesses us with so much of it here too. Not with Mike. Mike's in trouble. I'm still worried about Mike. This happened a few years ago. And he's not a happy person. But I think all of us here are pretty happy. Krishna speaks about this. You are so much loved by me. So that is not a divinity who merges everything into himself. That is a divinity who wants to relate to us. He wants to relate to you. Yeah. 1864, chapter 18, verse 64. That's the verse I recommend for you. Okay? Of my translation. Yeah. Because not every translation brings that out. So, guaranteed, or your money back. Any other comments or questions? Yes?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
First of all, I'm so grateful that we got to listen to you today. It's been a delight.
Okay. Thank you.
And
Happy to serve.
it was wonderful listening to your journey. Like you visited India when you were just 18, and you've been visiting since the past 15 years, 50 years.
Yeah, some 80,
Yeah.
I think, 80 years.
Back and forth. So I just want to ask you, you teach in the Western America.
Yes.
You visit India often. I want to know, how do you feel every time you come to India? Do you feel different, something stirring in your heart? Do you feel a difference in the energy, the cosmic energy,
Yes.
when you are here?
Oh,
Every
yes.
time you come here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so natural for me to be here. And I don't like shopping in America, you know? I love shopping for our altar, our deities, and all the shops in Vrindavan and kurta, dhoti, you know, sari, everything. But in America, I never go shopping. So I love all of the articles, the devotional articles you can buy in India. But then visiting the holy places, there's nothing like it. In Jaipur, when we were in Jaipur, we started out there first, we went to Govindaji for Mangala Arti, and it was so moving. I'll never forget it. I've been to Jaipur and Govindaji before, but not during Mangala Arti. And I think Krishna Kanta would agree with me that it was so deeply moving. And we got a place right up front, and right by the edge of the altar. It was just beautiful. I mean, so these things just keep happening whenever I come to India. The smoke is a little hard sometimes. The smoky air, and it's. And as we were coming into Delhi, I heard that this pollution's quite bad here. So I held my breath all the way through because I'm very accomplished pranayama yogi. So I only breathed when I entered this building, and now I'm fine. Right? Didn't I seem a little like, right. Okay. So, coming to India is always just wonderful. But then we also have a beautiful home where we have enshrined Radha Krishna deities in an exquisite sandalwood, pure sandalwood singhasana. And our Radha Rasaraj deities are so beautiful. And this is where Krishna Kanta and I do our writings and our educational work. So that's also the Holy Land as well. Yeah. But we love being here. Yeah. Especially with all of you.
Prabhuji, this is a follow-up question because many of the parents here who have sent their kids abroad, particularly to the US,
Oh, I'm so
to
sorry.
study.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I'm really
so
sorry.
and then the common.
My condolences. No, I want to offer.
I mean, you've already preempted the question.
Yeah, okay.
So, which
Yeah.
is basically many of them. The refrain is that we've sent them there and they've come back as atheists. So,
Oh, perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, I think a stage of atheism is healthy. I mean, look. In a sense, Arjuna was an atheist in the first chapter. He just wasn't focusing on the theism. He was embroiled in the world. He was distracted by the world, and he wasn't able to see further. Sometimes that's a good thing, a stage through which one may have to go. But soon, hopefully, we learn that what is in our hearts is the ultimate purpose of life. That to realize Krishna, the divine presence within our hearts, and the divine presence in others' hearts, and who we are truly, essentially, is so important. So maybe there's a stage of that. But as parents, show them how much you love Krishna in their hearts. That's the best parenting that one can do. Show them the love. Show them that this extra love of Krishna Bhakti. If you're in love, they'll be like, wow, I want to do what they're doing. That's ideal parenting. Oh, and do the detached thing. Oh, you're an atheist. Oh, darling, that's so nice. But I'm going to the puja now. I'm so excited. No, you go on with your little atheism. That's fine. I'm going now, and I will be joyfully dancing and having prasadam and with all my friends. But you stay home and you do your atheism thing. That's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is he allowed to ask a question? Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, what is surrendering and what to surrender to Krishna?
I say never surrender. Surrender, I know the word is used a lot. Surrender implies something involuntary, something forced, like at a time of war. Like you've tried everything and then finally you surrender because you have to, because you're powerless. But if we're talking about the self-surrender of love, well, okay, then you're giving everything. Atmanivedanam. You're giving all of yourself to the divine. And it doesn't mean that you hate the world. In fact, it's just the opposite. You see divinity piercing through this material veil. And Krishna teaches this in the Gita, in 7th chapter, 9th chapter, 10th chapter, and 11th, how the really superlative, beautiful things of this world are a little spark of his perfection and his splendor. So he gives us these gifts, So surrender, if you mean the self-surrender of a loving heart, yes. If you mean just surrender, like you got to do this. You need to discipline yourself no matter what. Well, there is sadhana bhakti. Vaidhi bhakti means following certain practices, certain disciplines, certain rules. Yeah, I feel that way sometimes too. And timing has worked out beautifully. Right. You and I talked about that, right? We've timed all these things. Yeah, we planned these things. Yes, indeed. And so, but there are rules. It's like anything. If I told you I'm learning violin, and you say, "Oh, that's wonderful, Garuda. Who's your teacher?" "Oh no, I'm just teaching myself." Right? No, there needs to be a guide. There needs to be a teacher or teachers, and that's really someone who's dedicated, one who really finds a teacher. And a teacher isn't necessarily found. A teacher sort of shows up in your life and becomes someone from whom you feel you can trust with the teachings of the Gita, of the Krishna Bhakti, etc. And there's no, sort of artificially determining that. It becomes obvious. So surrender is about giving yourself fully to the process of Krishna Bhakti. That's the way I would translate the word surrender, even though surrender is not a word I particularly like. It's a wartime word. But Prabhupada uses it, but I know how he uses it. He means the self-surrender of the heart. Yeah. What do you think? Is that good enough, or you can push me further? Really? Okay.
My question isn't very sophisticated.
Okay, next question then. I only want okay, go ahead. Yes.
I think it's something which I have been struggling with lately is that something isn't right for you rationally, philosophically, going to take you away from Krishna. But the conditioning is so deeply embedded in you.
Yes.
So how do we work around that? Not the rationale answer, because the philosophy is clear, the rationality is clear.
Yes.
But how do we, that conditioning, how do we navigate through that?
Yes. That is what the Bhagavad Gita is all about. It starts with Arjuna's conditioning, just collapsing in on him and just finding no way out. He's broken down. And Krishna shows him how there's a bigger picture within which our small conditioned and more painful picture fits. So that bigger picture is what we learn in the Bhagavad Gita. And it gives us perspective, you know. We learn that we have a life within. We learn that we have a friend within. So that's why we should be studying Bhagavad Gita every day. Even right before you go to sleep, everyone, no matter how busy you are, can read one verse. Yeah. Yeah. Of the Bhagavad Gita. It's so important. And you know, as you go through Bhagavad Gita, you may read a verse that goes, I'm not sure what that means. I'll read the purport that Prabhupada writes. And you may not fully befriend that verse, but when you come across a verse that's so beautiful, just speaks to you, goes right to the heart, then you should write it down, take it with you everywhere, get to work. Yeah. So anyway, the point is you need to be crying out with that verse, just like that. You know, one who sees me everywhere and sees all things in me, to such a person I am never lost, nor is such a person ever lost to me. You know, I mean, does it get more beautiful than that? Find your favorite verses. You don't have to love every verse equally. Make friends with the Gita. Read the Gita. And then you will have more ability to witness your conditioning rather than to be lost within it. Okay? Was that good? I thought it was a very sophisticated question. Yeah, you were trying to fool me, weren't you? Yeah, well, you didn't. I know that was a very sophisticated question. It's good. Yeah, make friends with the Gita. Take up the Gita. Realize that when you read the Gita, this is the ultimate relationship you have beyond all relationships. When you leave this world, that's what you take. That's what you take.
We have time for one last question.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I want to ask one thing that you said that mostly teachers and gurus shows up. So many times what happens is we see famous talks or famous gurus on YouTube, and we get very, you can say, connected to them, and we are getting all what they are saying. So, like, it's not a physical or offline relation. You can't. That's a very one-way communication because you can only hear what they are saying. You can't ask questions to them. So, how practical is to follow them? That's my question.
Yes. So you're speaking about famous gurus, like very widely known gurus who have thousands and thousands and thousands of disciples, right? So yes, I mean, when their teachings speak to you and inspire you, then they're at least your Shiksha Guru. They're teachers. They're your teachers. But it is an exceptional privilege to have a guru who can guide you, who can work with you, who can know you and can love you for who you are. That's ideal if you can find that, or if it finds you. Yeah. So that's what Krishna does with Arjuna. Arjuna called him the ultimate guru, and he is the ultimate guru because he is in all of our hearts. But the point of an external guru is to make sure we're hearing the internal guru correctly. Or if the external guru doesn't sound right, and something's not right, then that's not your guru. Yeah. So it works both ways. The only absolute guru that there is Krishna. And if someone comes along in your life who is, as Prabhupada calls it, a transparent via medium, transparent, that means you don't even know the glass is there. But when it's dusty and a little dirty, you know it's there, and that's not pleasant. To see through glass that is tainted with some dirt. So choose a guru, or find a guru, or if the guru shows up in your life, you need to interact and make sure that this is someone in whom you can place your trust in spiritual life.
I have a question on that. So, for example, if I take two cases, and one there is someone, Guru online, and he has a lot of videos. I can like live my life and go along with all his videos, and I have an option to meet of Guru in physical, relationship, like offline relationship,
Yes.
and then go along with my spiritual journey with him. So, what would be like more sensible, like the first case that I'm saying, that I have a lot of videos and I think he's the one person that I really relate to. I have full faith in him.
Yes.
And then I can't meet him because of certain conditions and practicalities.
Right.
So would it be right to just follow him, even he has a lot of content I can consume all along my life, or that's just a type of medium to get some more things, but I should go with a guru who I can meet and communicate.
Okay, so I mean, the simple response from me is whatever inspires you and lifts you up, you should always get more of. What truly lifts you up and inspires you in Krishna Bhakti, don't deny yourself of it. And I don't care what form it comes in. Now, as you get more and more serious about spiritual life, it is likely that something, that Guru Tattva will arrange something for you in your life that will be suited just for you and how to support you personally and lift you up in your spiritual life. Yeah. So have faith, but never deprive yourself of something that is lifting you up and inspiring you, whatever that is. And these days we have the internet, so we're hearing people all over the world. We can hear so many teachers. But follow the ones that really inspire you and keep going with that. Then Krishna will send Guru to you. Yeah, that's how it happens. Yeah. I think now we have the most important part of the program, the prasadam. Is that right? Yeah. I'm sorry if I've kept all of you. I didn't mean to.
We really like to thank Prabhu for being here with us in between all his travels and to have this program with you and our gathering or Sangha. Just to give you a quick background, our association, my particular association, it's a full circle. So there's a student I had worked with as a coach long time ago when he was in high school, and he turned out to attend University of Virginia, and that's where I believe he met with you, Prabhu. His name today is Premananda Vilas. So I really, if he's watching sometime later, really thank him to make this a journey of a full circle. And I was like an ignorant college admissions counselor to now learning baby steps of Krishna Bhakti from you. It's just a delight to be part of this journey. And thanks to him. So I just wanted to be slightly emotional. So this is a shout out for Abir. Okay. And so for today evening, I would say that all of you would have also gathered so many questions. If you're okay, you'll be around prasadam.
No, I'm not going to talk to him.
I'm sure there are so many inspirational sort of questions, ideas, references you might have. So feel free to reach out.
Yes, my flight is at 4:55 in the morning, so I have up to 4:30 in the morning. Ask anything up to that time.
So we'd like to thank you again by a count of 3.
Oh, no.
Thanks to Rahul Prabhu. Another earth-shattering.
Okay, let's get over with.
3, 2, 1.
Hari Bol.